Well, and you actually touched on this already. Whoopi Goldberg was suspended for 2 weeks from The View. She's back now.
Yes.
And what she said as a Jewish person, I didn't actually find all that offensive. She basically said, when she talked about the Holocaust, she said it's not about race, but about man's inhumanity to man. This is white people doing it to white people, so y'all going to fight amongst yourselves. When it comes to Judaism, the race and religion thing is very fuzzy.
It is.
And for someone who hasn't been Jewish like their whole lives and kind of grew up in it, being a Russian Jew and having to move out of, and everything else like that, it really, there's a whole kind of aura and nuance about it where you do feel it's a race because, my mother was Jewish, her mother was Jewish.
And because of what Hitler said. But here's the thing.
And with Hitler, I mean, he chose a group of ethnic people and killed them, right? But I can understand someone who isn't Jewish to think that, okay, it's just a religion and this is just white people. I was just like, it doesn't seem like it was that big of a deal.
Well, I guess to people who here's the thing that's interesting. There is no way to have a nuanced conversation about something as abominable as the Holocaust. There's no way to do it because people are going to not hear you halfway through it.
Yeah.
And so there's no way to have that conversation, so it's pointless. I will say this, having said that, I will say this, that it's not hard to get. I understand that Hitler called it a race, an inferior race.
Yes.
But you can convert to Judaism. I right now could convert to Judaism.
Well, which actually brings us to an interesting point. But go ahead and finish your point.
And you can't convert to blackism. You can't convert to that. You can.
Rachel Dolezal would actually argue with that, but whatever.
And look what there are people, even when they were committing these abominations, they had to differentiate them. They had to show that he's different from me.
Right.
They had to put
they had to wear the Star of David patch.
Because they couldn't. You couldn't just at first glance see somebody.
True.
So I can understand these two things that you can't.
Although a Jewish person can look at another Jewish person and know they're Jewish.
Listen, I can't.
But this is what I'm saying. It runs deep. As someone who's been Jewish for 48 years, I could tell. I could also tell. You probably can't tell a Russian from a Hungarian, but I could probably tell.
But what about an Ashkenazi Jew from a Sephardic?
From a Sephardic Jew. Well,
could you tell that?
It gets a little fuzzy.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. It gets a little fuzzy at that point. Or an Ethiopian Jew. Can you tell an Ethiopian Jew from an Ethiopian Christian?
Right. So we can't. When you say anything, that is a large range of people. But I'll say this: it is. We don't have. It seems ironic that we have a show called The View where you can't express them.
Well, so the interesting thing about, and you talk about converting, is that once I actually dug into the story a little bit, because I'm like, okay, hold on, Whoopi Goldberg. That's probably not a real name. Sure enough, it's not.
Of course
it's
not.
Karen Elaine Johnson.
Right.
She converted her name or changed her name to Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Cushion, but Goldberg is a Jewish name.
Right.
And in the beginning, I guess her mother even said that, if Johnson wouldn't be accepted as a Jewish name, so she actually, pushed for Whoopi to actually change her name to Goldberg. And in the beginning, back in 2011. Well, not in the beginning, but at some point, 10 years ago, Whoopi actually said, "Oh, I'm Jewish. I don't know why people question it and so forth. I grew up Jewish and everything else like that." But then later on, there was a show on PBS that actually traced her lineage, and there was no Jewish anything in her lineage. They tested her DNA. It was 92% sub-Saharan African. So essentially, according to one account, Emma Johnson, who was her mother, thought that the family's original surname was not Jewish enough for her daughter to become a star. So she changed her name to a Jewish name to become a Hollywood star, which people seem to forget. And now, years later, she's being, canceled over Jewish comments, which is, to me,
I think that it's a jump ball at best. It's ignorance. If you want to say that she didn't dot her I's and cross her T's. I certainly do not think it was a malicious place. But I also
don't think so either.
There's no way to have that conversation in normal everyday parlance in this country, because almost everything you say is going to be, we don't have conversations like that to learn. We have conversations like that to pick stuff apart. We have conversations like that to say, what but that? So ultimately, I think I most certainly wouldn't consider myself an expert, but I do know this. Ain't nobody who's gonna say something offensive saying it at 11 o'clock in the morning when people are watching.
I mean, I think
that means to do.
I think the Jewish community is overly sensitive. You know, as someone as part of that community, I will say that they overreact too often, which a lot of times almost creates some of the friction.
Sure.
You know, over the overreaction. You know, as opposed to saying, whatever.
But
that ain't that big of a deal. You know,
I tell you how. I just think we have we know what not to say. We know where the landmines are for the most part. And I think that doesn't really mean that we're having true examinations of our feelings and true interchange. It means that we're having the one that we feel is safe. And I think right now that's failing us because we have killed discourse and murdered discourse. Even I don't have to agree with you to know that you have the right to say what you say. I don't have to understand it, but there is a true amount of respect that it takes for somebody to form a thought. I think that people now listen to indict and listen to destroy and listen. Like even when we do interviews, you know that if you word the statement this way, it's going to be more provocative, right? That's just, and you can do that in journalism or what you do, even it's this. But if you do that in conversation, we have now, because most people don't read the whole article. Most people don't listen to the whole story.
Right.
They don't listen to the whole conversation. They'll hear the thing you said, and that'll be the tone of the interchange you have. And I just think now when we need to have an understanding of people's perspective, we don't. And it's interesting because in the same time Whoopi suspended for saying something once, you have a dude who's not suspended for saying something for 13 years, and the juxtaposition is hypocritical.
Yeah, he didn't get suspended at all. You're right.
I'm sticking by him. We don't. So I can't live in a world where I can't help but notice a world that has these kind of stark examples.